Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another recording regarding the RWA Pod. I am here with Julian Kwan, the CEO of IXS, for a fantastic conversation about the amazing things they're doing in RWA. Julian, how you doing today?
Hey Ray, doing great. Good to see you here.
Awesome. Always a pleasure to see you as well, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us today. So I'd just like to kind of deep dive on what is IXS? What are you guys doing in the industry? Your personal view on RWA and where this entire thing is going as we
Sure.
undertake the largest transformation in capital markets in the last 100 years or so. So it's super exciting times to be working in the
Yeah.
industry. So just jumping in, Julian, curious, like, what's your background and what led you to creating IXS?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Julian Kwan, co-founder, CEO of IXS. IXS is my seventh kind of startup. I've been running my own startups since I left university. I my journey was finishing university in Australia in Sydney, and I went to China for to learn some Chinese, and then got hooked on the China bug and started my first company. I co-founded was an advertising SMS company back when that was all you could do on phones was text. Way before probably everyone listening's era here. Turned that into a social media representation for foreign sports teams, and as there's no Facebook, there's all the Chinese versions of the app, so that became very successful. I also did a lot of stuff on the real estate side. So I built the first boutique hotel in Shanghai called Urban Hotel. It was the first Cup and Usual project. It was kind of a big hit. Did a bunch of other real estate projects and moved to Singapore about 10 years ago because I was very interested in the internet marriage of investing, private investing. Raising funds for anything is extremely painful, very slow, and very liquid, with a real estate venture. So I saw this crowdfunding model come out in the US and decided that I wanted to do that. I wasn't going to stay in China. There's no such thing as foreign tech founders in China. And Hong Kong was very anti-tech. So this goes back to 2015, 16. So Singapore was very pro. So we came down here and we set up InvestorX, which started as a real estate crowdfunding platform. And then the 2017, 18 ICO boom, we immediately thought, well, this is the tech we really want, not the first generation of crowdfunding platforms. Why don't we go full tilt into RWA, which we used to call security tokens? We added an exchange license to our existing broker deal license. That was on the InvestorX side, so that platform actually started before. And then IXS came along. So in 2021, we were looking around the world of the marketplace. There was no liquidity solutions for RWA. So we wanted to build the Uniswap for RWA, which started as IXSwap. Now it's just rebranded IXS this year. It's the same name as our token. And the original model was to allow anyone with a real world asset token to start a liquidity pool. So if you think about Uniswap's the most famous one, but the DEXs, the real magic was anyone could start a liquidity pool. That's the real magic. And then they could build from there. So thousands and thousands of altcoins that couldn't afford $1 million to list on Binance started on the DEXs. And even now today, a lot of people avoid the centralized crypto exchanges altogether. But that was a real innovation. And they use smart contracts and a swap model versus an order book and matching engine in a crypto exchange. So slightly different model, but became extremely, those Uniswaps, it's one of the top three, I think, development innovations in blockchain ever in history of, or the DEX model is for sure. So we said, okay, if everything gets tokenized, which Brian Armstrong and Larry Fink have been talking about recently, but we were saying back in 2018, then there needs to be venue to try to allow Ray's startup token or Julian's real estate token or the millions and millions of tokens to come out. So that still exists. We were very, very early. We did put up the very first liquidity pools, but most of those assets were private assets. So there's still a lot of challenges in that marketplace. And so what we've done now this year through joint ventures with crypto exchanges where we power the real world asset tokenization, because we've got the tech and the licenses and they don't, or they might have the tech, they don't have the licenses. You can't, real world asset tokens are mostly securities. They're a different asset class. So to invest, trade, buy, sell, you can't do it on the crypto platforms unless they've got licenses or partners like us. And most of them, clearly don't. Uniswap is not allowed and took down any real world asset tokens from their platform because that would be seen as trading securities and they don't have any licenses because it's a decentralized crypto exchange. So anyway, IXS evolved with the market. Fixed income products like treasuries and money market funds became a product market fit for the industry. More 18 months ago, we started to see this really taking off because of the unique element that stablecoins earn no yield. So for the hundreds of billions of stablecoins, we started seeing people go, okay, let's tokenize treasuries as a 5% yield, which is 500 basis points above zero from Circle or Tether. So it's a huge amount. It was a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then that started to evolve. So IXS is now focused on, you can still launch any type of token on it. Recently we've been putting treasuries and money market funds. We're looking at private credit, and we've recently launched the first real yields for Bitcoin, where we loan stablecoins to Bitcoin holders that are reinvested in fixed income real world asset tokens, and that's the real yield. So it's different from BTC-Fi, but I think it's very exciting and interesting, and we're rolling out with partnerships with big custodians that have large percentages of the Bitcoin. So there's a lot to digest, but that's what we've been up to.
That is fantastic. Now, there's a lot of rich, fertile territory to kind of double click on here, Julian. It definitely sounds like you guys were, if not immensely early, definitely some of the first. That's for sure. And I really kind of want to start in that narrative that you've outlined for the history of IXS, and kind of start at the beginning and kind of walk through. 2017, that was a very exciting time for a lot of folk, but many of the assets that we saw being issued, like DentaCoin, for example, I love to pick on DentaCoin since it was a coin for dentists. What does it do? Don't worry, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, right? And that's very different from actual RWA, where you have a real world business with real world revenues, et cetera. So back then, what was kind of your aha moment where you saw this ICO craze exploding and the opportunity that you saw to delve into actual real world assets rather than just kind of a representation of something that could be real?
Yeah. Well, I guess journey back to memory lane. So what happened was thousands of people were launching ICOs, and we immediately thought everything's going to, in a world of digital currencies, we should have a world of digital securities. And it's all going to be on these new rails. They're the new power, the decentralized, they're the fastest, transparent, etc. All the good stuff about blockchain. But if you wanted to deal in RWA, you're gonna have to get licenses, or you're gonna get dinged for doing stuff illegal. What happened at the same time, which is really interesting, we were in Singapore. This was home to 35% of global ICOs. So it was absolutely. I went to about 500 ICO events that year to try to understand how to do security tokens, which are now RWA. So we looked at this and said, okay, and at the same time, the SEC came in and started saying to a bunch of ICOs, you've got securities features, you're a security, even though you're saying you're not. You're offering yield, you're offering equity, you're offering guaranteed dividends. That's a security. You've issued that illegally. So that happened. Maybe the SEC was the one who did it, but the industry used to be called security tokens, and then it was rebranded digital securities, and then it was back to STO, and then last year or the year before we ended up at RWA, which that's a whole podcast in its own right. But so what happened was we saw, so we believed it would happen a lot faster, to be honest. I mean, here we are in 2025. We've been at this for 6+ years because what happened at the time, we called the regulator in Singapore and said, we want to do security tokens. What do we need to do? And they said, is this a security? And I said, yeah, that's what it's called. And they said, well, you follow the rules of your license, and hang up the phone. But the reason why that's kind of important was kind of we thought that's very logical. When you talk about securities, you don't say securities issued on paper. You just say securities. So the regulation doesn't need to change. Now, it could do with upgrades for sure, but it doesn't need to change. So it was like, well, we're ahead of the curve because we've already got these licenses that take years, but let's add an exchange license because one day there'll be enough of these tokens and there'll be enough volume and all that. And that's still building up years later. And then obviously the world ran into COVID and everyone lost 2 or 3 years of their lives. But more so, it was really a year or two ago, this product market fit for the tokenized treasury, because a lot of private assets were tokenized, but they didn't scale that well. We needed buy side. Where's the buy side? And so what sort of evolved through that time was that we found product market fit as an industry with these tokenized fixed incomes. We had Larry Fink come and say, everything's going to get tokenized. It's all going to be on public chain. So one thing that was really important about IXS is we went public chain from day one. There's no fiat in IXS. You must have stable coins to buy a real asset token. we ended up getting all the licenses so anyone can come in with one photo ID and $1 and buy buy a real world asset equity token, not a crypto. And so we were like, okay, this is where it's all going to go. We want to be in. We want to be all in. When everyone finally works it out, we'll be ahead of the curve and what's needed. There's obviously mad confusion around the industry, the assets, regulations still. Maybe that continues for a long time. But you really just had these big guns saying, and that sort of changed everything, right? And then now,
Hmm.
if you talk about the big guys who really move markets, the CEO of Robinhood has been very vocal online about the need to tokenize stocks and put them on his platform, which he's already started doing in Europe. That's an RWA. And they've got 25 million users. So, and now Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, Coinbase, one of our investors, saying everything's going to get tokenized. We're buying a broker dealer, or we're getting a broker dealer, we're getting a securities license, and we're going to start adding these assets. So we always thought the world would platform, I call it platformize. And that's like app. We're all on apps for everything. We're all on platforms for everything. And eventually there'll be some massive consolidation, but eventually, the web 2 fintech guys would definitely come because they want to sell more things. Anyone who's got a big audience want to sell them more things, right? So the fintech guys selling stocks would add crypto. Robinhood proved that. Um, and then now they're moving to the RWA because it's the rails for everything. And then Coinbase is doing it, but they're just the best two examples, especially for the US audience, of like what's all changed. It's like the stuff that they're saying today. You can go and check out history of social media. We've literally been saying the same stuff for like 5 or 6 years. It was just took a long time. As you said, biggest
Hmm.
opportunity in finance doesn't happen overnight, and there's a lot of you've got to think about the essence of blockchain. The essence One of the key essences of blockchain is the ability for, let's call it, trustless transfer of value. Forget all the hacking and scamming. I'm actually just talking about you and I wanting to transfer whatever, huge amounts of value, stable coin to real asset token. The entire capital markets exists with middlemen. The entire payment world exists with middlemen. So you're actually bringing in a technology that will destroy a massive percentage of those businesses in that industry, which is why it's taken a bit of time because people
Oh
are going to
yeah,
hold on to those fees as long as possible, right? But
absolutely.
yeah, so look, that was the journey. I believed in it from day one. I thought this just makes so much sense. Many times people thought we were nuts, crazy. What are you talking about? No one's going to buy an equity token. No one's going to buy it on a public chain. No one's going to do this. No one's going to do that. And now we're here at a moment where we've finally got a regulatory support from the Trump administration, although there's regulatory support in many other countries, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, they're Bahamas, Bermuda. The US is very late to the party, but then is catching up very quickly. But
Hmm.
it's just a massive deal. So now it's become the obvious thing, although for some reason it wasn't obvious at all. It's like anything, right? It's not obvious, and then suddenly everyone piles in. So it's great. It's great that we're still here. A lot of companies have died. A lot of companies have raised a lot of money and had to burn through that. It's always difficult being new in a new industry. Very difficult. It's very exciting, but it's very difficult. A lot of brain damage. A lot of arrows in the back, as they say, when you're out in front. But yeah, never been more excited. IXS is 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 just so incredibly undervalued because so many people just haven't heard of us, don't know what's going on, and it's taking this sort of global Wall Street Coinbase marketing campaign. Essentially, it's what it is, telling people
Hmm.
what's what, and then people go, "Oh, okay," and then obviously you guys, RWA Foundation, and all the exciting stuff you're doing there. Now's the time to get involved and get started. If it might be somewhat late to the party with crypto. It's definitely not late to the party with RWA.
100%. It's just the rails that matter. And there's some great points that you made there, Julian. Especially regarding the intermediaries and Upton Sinclair. Great quote. It's very difficult to get someone to understand something when their very salary depends on their
That's
not
right.
understanding it.
100%.
I think it's a generational thing as well, right? I mean, you're see having a whole new generation of asset managers wondering why is there T2, T3 settlement? I can I can summon a car on my iPhone. Why am I having to go through this process? But to your point, it's a fits and starts sort of thing. And while we may be late or may not be late to the party, the fact that we're still calling this RWA, which all of my friends in TradFi say, hey, so you're into risk-weighted assets.
They don't like it.
That's
They don't like
no,
it.
no, it's confusing as well. I think it's kind of challenging for the
It is
Web3 folks
confusing.
because they're
Yeah.
already in Web3, and we're kind of
Yeah.
meeting in the middle at Web 2.5, and that's Web 2 has all the capital. Web3 may have all of the innovation. So meeting in the middle really
That's
makes
right.
a lot of cohesive sense. And what you said about the licensing component is absolutely huge. Definitely, we don't need to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater and reinvent the compliance rails. These are here for a reason, but they could do with some updating, as you mentioned. And I know those licenses have enabled IXS to do some really interesting and innovative things, not least the Bitcoin real yield product that you mentioned. I'd love to
Yep.
double click on that because we've talked a lot
Yep.
about RWAs, and I think a
Yep.
lot of the audience knows that real estate can produce a yield, so can treasuries, et cetera. But Bitcoin is one of those assets that's still very new for traditional asset managers, and it's kind of seen as the old kind of lumbering OG crypto. So now that we're endowing Bitcoin with some yield, this gets very interesting, not just for the TradFi side, but also for Web3 natives as well. So can we talk a little bit about the Bitcoin yield
Yeah.
product and how that functions?
Yeah. So um, the main challenge, there were three sort of main buckets of challenges, I think, for the industry when it's new, right? Back all the way back, sort of 2018. So first of all, you need infrastructure,
Mhm.
custodians, broker dealers, tech licenses. Then you need good quality assets, and then you need buyers, right? And all three of them didn't exist on day one, right? So we've been solving that as an industry as we go. So, like how I think about, and so there's one way that most people buy invested to real asset tokens today. You take your fiat from somewhere, you get your hands on a stable coin, and you go to an RWA platform and you buy treasury token, startup token, equity token, whatever. That'll continue till the end of time. What we thought about, we actually had a couple of the very biggest Bitcoin mining companies in the world call us last year and say, "Oh, we heard about you guys. We're interested in RWA. Can you put, can we put these assets on the Bitcoin protocol? You use Base, Coinbase, whatever else, you Ethereum, Polygon, these other protocols. Can we use Bitcoin?" And I said, "Well, that's pretty cool." Technically and legally, yes. We haven't done it, but sure. And that led to discussions of how much Bitcoin have you guys got? And the answer was like insane amounts. What do you do with it? Pretty much nothing. So then I went, okay, this is something that we need to. So it was really a call from someone else that just started asking me about what we're doing, that started these ideas in my head. Then I went, okay, let's look at this. So then I look at like what, and I'm a Bitcoin holder, but and I've done nothing with it. Like 99.9% of Bitcoin holders didn't want to risk DeFi. I wasn't going to trust other people.
Mhm.
What's out there from a platform perspective? There's really only BTC DeFi, and essentially you can put your layer one core Bitcoin, original Bitcoin, lock it up for some time, and you get altcoin rewards of the Bitcoin layer two chain. So it's DeFi
Mhm.
rewards. That's great. It's innovative. It's cool. It's interesting. Obviously, the whole of DeFi and crypto is built with just token for token and all this stuff. Works very well when markets are going up. Obviously, doesn't work at all when markets are going down. But more importantly, let me look at that. So there's some great products out there. I think Maple Finance and Core DAO have got a great product. There's about $7 billion of Bitcoin. That's last time I checked. That was um, you call it investing into that product, right? But the Bitcoin market's about 2.2 trillion on any given day. So it's less than like what 300ths of like 1% or something like that, right? So it's
Mhm.
obviously almost all the Bitcoin doesn't do it. So then we're like, okay, well, let's have a look at this. If you're a very sophisticated uh, crypto trader, TradFi trader, um, whatever fund, you might run option strategies yourself. But again, like that's people who do it as a business, right? For the
Mhm.
lion's share, the super majority of Bitcoin holders, they don't have those capacities, have that skill set, even know where to begin. So we looked at all this and then said, okay, this is really interesting. So what if we looked at using Bitcoin like a house, right? And we could loan money against that house. Um, the house would be collateral, but then we could give stable coins to the investors that are invested into fixed income. So tokenized treasury, 5%, tokenized money market fund, 7%, private credit, 8, 10%. So that's how it works. And we structured this really exciting product, which was always came from a Bitcoin holder first, Bitcoin investor first, right? Knowing the unique parts about Bitcoin, the unique sensitivity around cyber, the unique concepts of private keys, but also the unique element that it's not proof of stake. So it's the only, I don't know if there's others, but it's the main cryptocurrency out there that there's no staking program, there's no yield program around. So we loan 50% LTV to Bitcoin holders in these 0% interest loans, which we've structured with our market maker. So, and then, Ray, he can then take those stable coins and he can invest in the tokenized treasury or money market, RWA, that goes back into his wallet. So, so that's the product. Super excited to roll it out. We're rolling it out with a couple of the biggest custodians in the world. And it's just like brings productivity to like what we all consider in our space, at least, to be the king, right? Bitcoin's the king. It will never, hopefully never get, maybe it gets dethroned. Maybe IXS dethrones it out of that. But maybe it's like, if it's the king, we think it's going to 2, 4, 10, 50, 100 trillion. It's still going to produce nothing at 100 trillion that it's producing now. The asset doesn't change. So let's go tap that and get, and really, and that's just another channel, right? So instead of Ray getting fiat stablecoin real world asset token, Ray uses Bitcoin to borrow stablecoin by real world asset token. So essentially, it's another huge untapped buy pool for IXS assets. Holistically, then becomes a massive upside for our platform and our token, etc. So that's how we got to that. That's how we came here to this moment. And I've been, you've seen this explosion of digital asset treasury companies. This month has been amazing because it went up, it went down. It's super choppy because the underlying is crypto, but essentially just raising money to buy Bitcoin to hold Bitcoin is not enough anymore, right? Because, and the financial institutions, they got to be productive. What's the ROI on this? And so the original guys, well, a lot of the original guys, it's a very young industry, just said like, hey, we're raising money for Bitcoin and that's it. Now you can't raise money like that. You've got to have a different plan. And now we're saying all these digitalized treasury companies, we're coming together with them saying like, if you actually plug into our product, you'll be way more valuable than the rest of the DAT guys because your Bitcoin's earning yield and theirs isn't. And look at the numbers. Like it's insane when you take 5% versus 0% on big chunks of money, which is why treasuries took off in the RWA space for the stablecoin guys. People might think 5% is not a lot. 5% versus 0%, it's huge. It's 500 times more, 500 more bips than zero. So that's it. Obviously, you can tell I'm pretty excited by it. But, it's just one thing we're doing. And we're looking at expanding into the US. We're really excited about what's going on in your home turf. Like really excited. And yeah, it's a big part of our plans for the next 12 months.
Absolutely. And I can see why. I mean, people, just to kind of drive that point home, I mean, the US is over 40% of global capital markets. And I think in our industry, I made the joke that before that, I don't think people in Web3 or Web3 native really understand what a risk curve even is. But when you're managing $10 billion in assets at 5% yields, 500 million, that's more than enough operating capital for most organizations, right?
That's right.
And to that point, it's very interesting to see the innovation that you and IXS are carrying forward, because it does kind of mirror the history of banking and money get compressed into a very tight time frame. I mean, just with Bitcoins, we had runes and ordinals. It's kind of like using gold to ordain things, right? Or adorn things. Like, oh, look, beautiful gold art, that looks nice, but what do you do with that? It's very cool, but where's the value from financial perspective? And now being able to take that Bitcoin and use it as a tool in the financial kind of system and existing topography makes a lot of sense. It kind of points to the maturation of not only Bitcoin as an asset class, but of course as IXS facilitating that maturation. And that kind of leads naturally into kind of a follow-up question for you, Julian. There's a lot of, I guess you could say there's a wide delta between how TradFi and DeFi natives view each other. And I believe from all the conversations I've had from the TradFi perspective, there's a lot of maturing and kind of growing up our industry needs to do to be treated as a true financial player. So I would love to kind of double click on how you see what you're doing at IXS, with this Bitcoin yield product and more RWAs in general, helping to kind of mature our industry and allow us to meet in the middle at that Web 2.5 point.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the backbone of it all was like, what we need to do this properly. This will be institutionalized, which you've just touched on, and no one from that world's going to play around on any unregulated places if you have to have a license. Now, of course, DeFi is unregulated, but you don't have to have a license because crypto is not a security, right? But when you start talking about real asset tokens, and we couldn't shake our license. We have one already. So it was like, all right, well, let's just keep building. This was already a couple of years to get. And then, what we did actually was we looked at, from our perspective, IXS started as a tech-only platform because the original thinking was every single regulated RWA broker-dealer, et cetera, around the world will want a liquidity solution. So we'll just plug into them and leverage their license, right? And we'll just be the tech stack. We did the first integration with Investor X that had its own broker-dealer, and First Digital had a custody license out of Hong Kong. It was very, very complex. You've got regulated entities and compliance, and then you've got technology that no one's ever seen before. Very, very complex, but we did it. And then we went, InvestX was accredited investor only. And we were like, okay, first of all, we need retail. So what we did, we looked at 60 jurisdictions around the world. Our co-founder, Alice, is an ex-US real estate lawyer. And her and the team, and we had almost 15-20% of our team in legal, which most RWA platforms don't have, that I've ever met, don't have anyone in legal. I mean, that's the level of importance required, I would say. Well, that's the that's the least we could get away with. Still are people, but long story short, look at about 60 jurisdictions around the world and think, who's friendly to crypto, who's friendly to custody, and who's friendly to retail access to securities, right? So we ended up licensing up in Bahamas because they had a new license regime in 2020. It was called the Digital Asset Regulated Exchange Bill. And what it meant was essentially everything I just said you could have under one license, which is unlike anywhere else in the world. I haven't looked at it again recently, but up until recently, it was still no one was thinking like this. So we were like, okay, this is amazing. Let's get that. And then we can play, for all the retail as well, because all the crypto exchanges are full of retail users and they're all going to want to buy RWA and they're going to need the ability to sell to retail. But then institutions, again, aren't going to touch anything unless you've got a license anyway. So there's a purpose with doing it to get to Wall Street, and there's a purpose of doing it to get to the DeFi guys and the crypto guys, which much more. I'm very excited by that side. Of course, we'll build our platform towards that space, but we'll work with everybody, and we are working with both. So that was the journey. And then, for interesting story, an FTX turns up 6 months later and everyone's like, oh, this is amazing. You guys were ahead of the curve. And I was like, well, I've been in the space for a while. So let's just see, is it great or is it terrible? And like a month later, it was terrible. But anyway, they blew the whole place up, and they never even got to their first audit. So what most people, it wasn't, the guy was pulling off criminal activity. I mean, he could have done that anyway. I don't know, regulator would have caught him because it was like before the first basically audit. So, I'm defending and then Bahamas never actually got any negative flag, as it was like the guy was just literally stealing out of his accounts. I mean, you can have as much regulation as you want, but humans control stuff, and it doesn't matter what you say in the license. I can just steal stuff out of my bank account if I really want it. Right? It's very easy. We stuck it out. 6 months turned into 3.5 years. He definitely slowed everything down dramatically. So don't have much love for him. But anyway, that's what we did. So it was so we got to do things properly. I mean, as much as we want DeFi UX UI, you want the day when the Wall Street and the big money really turns up, as you said, and the Web 2 where all the real money is now, because again, the Web 3 guys are a very small percentage of humans on the planet. There's a much bigger universe that's untapped, untouched. And they're going to come in, they're going to need some framework that's Web 2 oriented. So actually, if you think about a lot of the most successful Web 3 platforms, if you really dive into the UX UI, the user experience, they come with an understanding that people are used to doing things this way, logging onto a website, paying a credit card, setting up social media, whatever that is. So let's not go too dramatically away for that. And then there are other platforms that went, let's go full, Web3 degen. If you don't know what all these terminology and acronyms are, you're not even, forget it. We don't even care. But we came at it more as in, when you think about selling a security and getting a license, the license is the activities, like the activity of how you do something. So when you start bringing in blockchain, you still have to do things a lot of the same way. You still have to KYC someone, you still have to give a wallet to someone, they still have to give you value, you have to give that back to them. There's only a certain amount of ways you can do that. But then you have to overlay this token wallet, and then the DEX gets a bit more complex. But so that was kind of the thinking. And We went this year. We've been really focusing on the institutional side again, like because that's you've got to think about we built for the entire market, but you want to scale up, you want to get the real money, you want to go to Team America, and I think as an industry, like the world needed America to come to the party like big time, and because of the change, the positive change in the regulations, the Genius, the Stable Act, the upcoming market structure bill. Yeah, it's just incredible. And you said before 40% of the market, capital markets American. That I don't know. Sure, let's take that as the number. What I was trying to get to is in our space, I feel like it's like 99.99% of the capital. Like
Mm,
it's almost 100%. Um, why? Because when you think about, and this is the thing that people kind of missed in the last couple of years. Some people missed. When you think about RWA securities, they're going to come from the biggest capital market. But why is a market big in the first place? A capital market exists, Singapore, Hong Kong, New York, London, because there's a very, very strong rule of law where investors feel protected. Therefore, they're willing to put all their capital into that market. And so what happened, interestingly, in 2018, 19, 20, there were jurisdictions, countries that I'd never heard of, basically trying to jump on the blockchain bandwagon. So what they said was, "Oh, we're going to be friendly for real world asset tokens." And then
mhm,
you'd go online and you'd look at it and be like an island in the Philippines that was literally on Google Maps. It was like an island. It wasn't even any buildings there. Like you couldn't see it. Or it was like Gibraltar, or it was like Malta, or it was these places where you'd never put a dollar without blockchain and just saying we're going to do RWA obviously is not going to do anything. And they learned, some people learned that the hard way. But the
mhm,
point is that like, yeah, America is the capital markets and RWA is the capital markets on chain. So that's it. It's that simple. And then now with just to give America a bit more, um, or to state some facts, but in the America's favor, I should say, like nearly every other country in the world has screwed up their stable coins. So the lion's share majority, it's almost again back to 100% of stable coins are US dollar stable coins. And the lion's share of RWA assets that are winning are US dollar stable coin paired because it's a US treasuries. So Team America kind of wins again, which is rapidly changed this year. Last year and 4 years before, everyone was running away, don't want to get arrested. Gary Gensler and the absolute kind of shit show that he was going on at the SEC. It all comes to a dramatic end, and then everyone wakes up and goes, okay. And then, by the way, like a lot of other places around the world, not Singapore, but other places are they're messed up. They're messing up their pathway forward. So you've now basically got a market where like everything's in US dollars. Also, US assets are obviously easiest to pair against because FX risk with different priced assets, a statement, it becomes an absolute nightmare. So, that's why we're big on America. I mean, it's not saying that there's not amazing stuff going on all over the world, but it's really a positive thing for America, and you know, that hopefully again that just lights the fire of everybody else that was sitting around doing whatever they were doing to go, okay, this Genius Act is trillions of dollars of stable coins because it's a guaranteed buyer of US debt, which means there's going to be 200 billion to 2 trillion. So they're going to be everywhere. It's a lot easier for anyone in Indonesia or anywhere to get their hands on a stable coin than it is a real dollar. Trying to get a real
mhm,
US dollar banknote as a non wealthy person in most countries outside of America, outside the developed world, is almost impossible. But getting a stable
mhm.
coin, now there's hundreds of startups delivering solutions. So going on a bit too much, but yeah, super bullish America and RWA, but also regulation had to be there or it doesn't go anywhere. And that's where we're at right now.
Mhm. No, 100%. I think you raised some, phenomenal points. I mean, we had the Treasury Secretary just come out, not too long ago saying, hey, stable coins that are dollar denominated are going to create $2 trillion of additional demand for US debt. And the idea that this is digital, it's very liquid. And I think that's the kind of common point why we're seeing stable coins take off so heavily. It makes sense to TradFi. And of course, for Web3 natives, it's just a thing that has always been around, at least since 2014, that can be utilized very, very easily. It has huge amounts of monetary velocity. I was speaking to the individual who's pretty high up at Stellar, and he was saying, "Hey, for every stablecoin we issue on Stellar, there's about $80 worth of economic activity." And you compare that to the monetary velocity of the dollar today, which is like I think 1.6 last time I checked. So it's
Right.
a delta of around 40 or 50 times,
Massive.
and it's absolutely huge. And something
Yep.
you mentioned, Julian, I think is very interesting is the kind of time preference versus complexity preference, as I like to phrase it, for the Web 2 versus Web 3 folks. The Web 2 folk, TradFi, they tend to have much more of a kind of longer time horizon, right? The idea of locking up private credit capital for 4 years is preferable, even because sometimes it could be as long as 7. Whereas over on the DeFi side and Web3 native side of the equation, uh, I make the joke. It's like telling your grandmother. It's like, oh yeah, no, you just need USDC. No, no, not that USDC. That's Arbitrum
That's right.
USDC. Oh, what is
That's right.
Arbitrum?
Wrong.
Okay, and then down the rabbit hole we go. So
Yep.
your
Yep.
point about abstracting away those complexities
Yep.
for the folk who are Web 2.5, who understand that we need this new technology, but it's a bit too clunky. I don't want to have to install my own web hosting, et cetera, to get on the internet. It wasn't until that abstraction occurred that I could do it. And nor do I want to wait 4 years to have capital unlock. I want liquid secondary markets around that.
Mm.
But I think one of the core components here, and I think you do such a great job with it over at IXS, is the community aspect. That's a big component of Web3 is the community and the culture that evolves around, particularly Web3 assets, but also, for example, Web2 assets like what we've seen in Robinhood. They've done a phenomenal job of curating a platform and a culture around financialization and financial assets. So I'm really curious here at the RWA Foundation. We like to work with the best RWA projects and protocols, hence why IXS naturally is one we're very proud to be working with. So I'm curious as well, Julian,
Thank
how
you.
do you see the role of community featuring in on-chain capital markets? I love that term, by the way, on-chain
Yeah.
capital markets that you use there.
Yeah. It's a great concept. So it's a great question because, you know, there's lessons, right? Everyone forgets that, or a lot of people forget that Web 2 and Wall Street existed before crypto and blockchain, right? And I think one of the best examples that I think um, for the community here to sort of think about is, the Wall Street's bets guys, right? So Wall Street's bets uh, had nothing to do with crypto originally, right? They were they built a culture and a community out of stock trading and small guys against big guys, but also sort of opportunistic and there's a play there. There was also there's some very interesting parts about that. A bit of gambling, bit of YOLO, and a bit of all that kind of stuff. But essentially, and I think you're right. I think we like to think that Robinhood is definitely an absolute global leader in both product and culture, and we actually have that as one of the companies that we aspire to be around some of our elements of the business, one of the brands that we really respect, and it's the same thing. Like and then so segue that into crypto projects, and forget real world asset tokens for now. Um, a lot of them don't have anything. The only thing they have is community. I mean, even
Mhm.
look at now, there are some top 10, 20 crypto projects that still no one has a clue what they do because they don't do anything. And then they're billions-dollar projects because they had a strong community. So, community pre or post or in or out of blockchain or on or off chain is a human thing. And at the end of the day, everyone's human who's investing, which is why we always have cycles, which is why we always up and downs, why everyone makes mistakes. So you take out crypto and you put in gold or you put in real estate or whatever, and you stand up, you start to see that, a lot of these assets end up acting the same because it's just a bunch of people doing the same, like buying and selling from each other, and you've just replaced the word. So, I think that community is super, super important. We've got an amazing community. This is our sort of third cycle now. So like we were sort of forced to launch by our VCs early on, which is one of the, I don't want to go on too long about it, but it's one of the reasons why a lot of TGEs don't work because all the VCs try and get all the liquidity on day one, and instead of, they took it way too far and they kind of destroyed a lot of the projects. But like us many years ago when we launched, we launched. But I was like, the product won't be ready for 3 years. They're like, well, we want liquidity and da da da. So we spend a huge amount of time and energy creating liquidity for our investors. We don't get anything out of it. We just trying to build the business. But that community started a long time ago, and they've been through the ups and downs. And obviously, right now, altcoins are it'd be hard to argue the altcoins aren't at least somewhere near the very, very, very bottom. It's been a tough year for everyone, but it's also been because Bitcoin has just been crushing it, which is great for the altcoin season. Everyone forgets that it's always led by Bitcoin. Then we've got all the digital asset treasury models that we've had Wall Street in America, and alts have been left on the sideline. But again, looking at all the cycles, we're in exactly the same position where before. It just hasn't started yet, so everyone's kind of upset, right? And we get that. I mean, everyone wants to make money. We get all that. But the point I was trying to make is we got a really different community. We've been building real things. Our community was never as big as other people who just said anything that wasn't true. And you can see in the chat groups, if you wouldn't notice so much, we notice because we analyze. The level of intelligence of our guys is far supersedes many other projects. I'm not going to name names, I'm just saying it because they're sitting there saying, they're asking us, and they're buying real world asset tokens, and they're questioning metrics, and they're questioning documentation, and they want to know what's really going on. And they're all over us. Like, it's almost feels kind of unfair. It's like, you guys, we're getting all the heat because we're actually doing real stuff, and then everyone is doing nothing, doesn't seem to have a problem, and they're chilling on a sofa. But anyway, each to their own. But really smart community building up now. I mean, our real focus now is to grow the community with smart, intelligent people and new community, new people to the industry, right? And a lot of crypto guys are new to RWA because they've never seen it before. Right? They don't know anything about it per se. And I tell everyone, it's like, we're massive on education. We love what you guys are doing here today, podcasts, speaking engagements, because I truly believe, and I think my money where my mouth is because I've been doing this with my whole life for 6 years. Like, this is, as you said, this greatest opportunity in finance since finance began. It's also, like anything, it's new technology marrying to an existing marketplace to see this explosion of growth and value, which we've already seen little bits of this, like the first electronic exchange versus, trading on the floor meant you and I and everyone on their laptops could trade, and the size of the stock market just exponential growth. We're going to have that, times 1,000, whatever it is. But the point I was trying to make is that it's like anything. It's like everyone wanted to be an 8-cent Bitcoin investor, right? But no one was there at the beginning trying to work it out, or very few people were investing time, energy, some capital, because if you don't put any money into something, you never really care as much. You just don't care as much, full stop. But now's the time to get on and listen to these podcasts, and go to RWA Pod and register at IXS and register at 10 other platforms. I love being compared to other people, and put a little bit of money. You can buy an RWA on a platform, $1 USDT. So don't tell me it's too expensive, but start understanding and learning, because the people that invest earliest in RWA will capture the most alpha, like the people that invested early in VC in Silicon Valley, or the first guys in Bitcoin or whatever. And there's so much to learn because it's exploding, and there's so many different, literally, things going on, and there's different assets, and there's different platforms, and there's different lending protocols, and there's some people doing it right, some people doing it wrong, and every day there's a new, like, it's really just exploding. So we really implore people to start that journey. Get on those newsletters, subscribe. It's a journey. There's not like push a button and you're an expert. Like, I've been on for 6 years, and every day I get 3 or 4 different newsletters, and I'm like, that's really interesting. And I'm using my GPTs, like, what the hell is that? And how does that work? And what would I do with that? And like, I'm still doing that all day long. And I'm being here sort of the longest out of most people. And because it's like, it's this technology flywheel that's growing and changing, and the regulations are changing, and everything's building, and it's just really, really exciting. But the only way to get started is to get started, and I wholeheartedly believe that will pay off for those that do that. And even if it doesn't work on this investment or that investment, again, that's experience, right? And then it's the same in crypto. If you haven't been burnt in crypto, you just couldn't have been in crypto properly, right? I mean, how's that possible?
Oh, 100%. No, that's
Yeah.
a tale as old as the industry. Absolutely. And I think you raised some really excellent points, regarding kind of community and the relative levels of sophistication and maturation there, Julian, to maybe kind of, show my kind of age a little bit. When I was in high school, and the popular things with silly bands, right? And the community kind of grew up around that. What shape animal or thing do you have? And those have gone the way of the dinosaur. Now it's Labubus, right? And those are interesting and fun, but likely they'll have the same fate, right? They'll be just kind of a relic of a given era. And why I bring this up is because naturally, there's to use the term delta again, there's a delta between sophisticated asset managers who are coming on chain and looking at this technology and looking at qualifying assets, and what tendentially is very easy to build a short-term community around. So, for example, you may have a fart coin is a funny one I like to lean on, but you're not going to have too many companies that are very sophisticated and have been around for 100 plus years, even 50 plus years, coming in saying, "Hey, the community manager, Happy Panda 888 said it's chill. We should totally put $1 billion behind this." And so the idea that the
Yeah.
existing IXS community has been around for so long, they're very astute. They're looking and doing this due diligence is how you build, at least in my experience and opinion, that strong foundation for a community. Look at the
Yep.
early Bitcoin community, for example, that
That's right.
went very far down the rabbit hole in terms of the technology, the ideology, and ultimately built the culture around it. And so these sorts of things are, very slow, and then all of a sudden, all at once,
That's
which
right.
I think we're seeing in a community formation standpoint,
Yep.
especially as we have every new generation of cyclical adopters for this technology. Kind of brings around flares, the ICOs in 2017, as you mentioned. Then we got NFTs, and now we're finally having that RWA, real world asset moment, where people
Yep.
come in and say, "Hey, where's this yield coming from? What does this actually
Yep.
mean?" And that's how you kind of build that up over time. Which leads to a really kind of good follow up question regarding additional RWA tokens. I know you guys have the Bitcoin yield product, which is super exciting, but you mentioned there's an exchange component. How do you go about vetting RWA or off-chain assets that make their way onto the platform? And how do you ensure that quality and sustainability that has become so associated with real-world assets?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, well, unlike crypto, where the assets issued natively on chain, there
Mhm.
is no register somewhere else. There is no paper. There's nothing else. Right? It's good and bad. I mean, that's why people can steal your crypto and away it goes. Uh, but it's good, right? The main thing that it's good. Uh, forget forget RWA tokens for a minute. Just talk about broker dealers. So a legitimate broker dealer gets a license to sell Ray securities. The license has rules. He must KYC Ray, make sure he's a legitimate person, all the fun stuff. It's normal, which now is exactly the same KYC on crypto exchanges. So there's no downside to doing that anymore. Um, and from what Ray buys or invests into would be assets, right? Assets on our platform. Again, legitimate companies who have those licenses, and you're not meant to have one if you're legitimate because you wouldn't get one or you'd lose it. You're meant to go through a very rigorous onboarding process. For example, Bob, the real estate manager, he's got an asset on our platform. We would have to check Bob. Does he have a license to even be a real estate manager? Is there the fund that he has? Like, where is that from? Does it even exist? Does it have liens on it? Is it legitimate? Are there any lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera? And because all these assets are very different, there's not one size fits all. But it's a very onerous checklist, right? And for anyone that's in crypto now, you'll find even trying to list your crypto on exchanges and stuff, there's any super onerous list. But before there wasn't, now there is. But the point I'm trying to make is that with real world asset tokens, you've got to do all of that. Then you've got to do an assessment of the actual token, the blockchain, token, smart contracts, the audit. So there's another layer on top of that. Now, what's super interesting, maybe we'll just sort of segue that into something that was happening in the recent news as of like a week ago. There's a fundamental structural issue at the moment with the real asset industry, in that the only platforms that people use to determine the value and the size of any real asset token are DeFi platforms. Right? CoinGecko, DeFi Llama, they've done an incredible job. But there's a distinction between a real asset token and a crypto. And that distinction is that crypto, all the information's on chain. With a real world asset, by the name of what it's called, the valuation, the property titles, the bank cash in the bank, whatever is associated with the real world asset token is in the real world, right? So you actually have to get attestations and third party suppliers and the broker dealers to find out and verify what the current value is. You can't do it purely on chain. The on chain is simply a representation of your share of the asset, and the value seeing on chain is meant to come from the real world. That's the logic. So you've had this very interesting challenge going on. And I think that both, you've got, I think recently Figure Market CEO saying we've got 13 billion, where are they? And then DeFi Llama saying we only check on chain. If it's not there, it's not there. And they're actually right from where they're both coming from. They're not actually comparing apples to apples, right?
Hmm.
And so there needs to be a standard, I think, a standard. There needs to be some kind of change because um, it's a fundamental concept of real world asset tokens, and it's a fundamental concept of um, who should be doing, who could do this, who can do this, right? And as a broker dealer ourselves, we have to do this. Token or paper, Ray invests in our business, in the products on our platform. He wants to know, right? So we go check, and that's business. And again, that's got nothing to do with blockchain. But like for some reason, we started launching RWA in crypto universe, and everyone just thought, well, let's just make our values, or let's not say the true value, or we're not acknowledging it's different. And I'm like, and it's like what is it, the elephant in the room. It's just like, guys, we need to, we'll talk a bit more about this, and we'll bring out some information on this because I think it's just like really fascinating. But anyway, that's one of the key elements of this is that there's not much of a, I'm not selling our own book, but like logically, there's not really a core argument that someone in crypto space, so forget blockchain, in the real world, to give these valuations, to show these valuations, you must have licenses for whatever that is. That's just how it works. So people can trust the valuation, right? It's just not Ray making it up. It's like Julian, he's got this license and this is the process, and he gets checked by these people, and that's why. So then it should be the same thing in real world asset tokens. Like we need to get the values from the people that are actually selling, because it's their neck on the line, right? If I say it's $100 million and it's 1 million, well, bye my company, right? Eventually.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's how it works right now. I think this probably has to be, people have kind of attacked this problem, not successful yet, i.e. let's build like oracles. But again, if you want to build an oracle for like a private asset, real asset token, the oracle would have to call up the fund manager and ask him what was the latest assets under management last week, because of course it can't do that. Maybe it will with AI at some point. But yeah, this is a fundamental issue that the industry needs to work together to solve. We're going to try and really drive some firepower into that. But look, at the end of the day, I think that tokenization of real world assets is offers just such an enormous amount of value. It brings multiple use cases to an asset. Just as one example, a piece of paper. If I own shares of even Ray's company, and I've got $1 million of shares on paper, most people look at me and go, "Good on you, that's great. Ray looks like a nice guy, whatever." But in a tokenized format, I could say in an environment that we just talked about, where valuations were trusted and tested by third parties, whatever, I might be able to go to that guy over there and go, "I've got 1 million tokenized shares in Ray's company, but I'd like to borrow some money off it. Do some LTV. Can we do something?" And then you can have this collateral, and you can actually create entire new use cases of lending and borrowing and collateralization. And that's the backbone of DeFi, isn't it? Forgetting the actual assets, that's the whole market, lending and borrowing, staking. So I think there's been a lot of misconceptions about what RWA is for and where it goes, and there's also misconceptions because there's utility tokens of RWA platforms, which are crypto, like IXS is a crypto token. A lot of people think that's the only definition of RWA. You've got stable coins, which are US dollar backed representation tokens, which again are cash tokens, if you will, but they've been called real world asset tokens. Then you have shares in Ray's real estate fund, which is a real world asset equity token. So you've actually got multiple definitions for these types of assets, which has been the bane of our existence, trying to explain to the more community coming in. But again, that's the whole point of getting in early and learning and making sure you understand the differences and going down each one of the rabbit holes and then working out how to maximize the value. And it's just like the last thing I'd say is, I was having drinks on the weekend with some VCs, investors and stuff. And anyway, a couple of TradFi guys, and they were moaning about cash. I think they get 20 basis points in their bank account. I said, we could put that on the stable coins as a real world asset token. You can go get 13% from these platforms over here. That's like 1,300 times, 1,250 times for cash as a token. Like they were, what? They would just ask him, what do you mean? Like what? This can't be possibly true. And I'm like screenshotting. I'm like, yeah, it's true. It's true in many places. And like, that's just one one example, and blew them away. So anyway, there's a lot of people that are coming into the space that you get blown away.
No, absolutely. And but you raised some great points there, Julian. I think one of the ones is taxonomy. We've begun to call these like IXS, for example. We're calling them ecosystem tokens because they're tied to an ecosystem.
Yes.
Then, of course,
Yes.
as you mentioned, you have stable coins and then real world asset tokens, which are tied intrinsically to that real world off chain asset. And to your point about the valuation, it reminds me very much of that comic where there's a number 6 or a number 9, depending on which way you're looking at it, and you
That's
have
right.
two heads yelling at each other. And of course, you do have the canonical argument that, well, someone wrote the number, so they know which is technically correct, and that would be the off-chain valuation, right? Where
Right.
ultimately you have that trust arrow that points towards the person who's doing that valuation. And I'm waiting for the day when we have those AI agents that make a phone call to a given valuation company and
That's
you know
that's what we need. That's what we need.
100%. Until one of the individuals hangs up because they think it's a spam call, and then they say, "Oh
Yep.
no, I missed a
Yep.
valuation window." That's a bit of a problem, but
Yep.
we call that luxury problems, right? I have to say, Julian, yeah, I'm blown away by the quality and the history, the rich history you have at IXS. One thing I want to underline for folks who are listening at home that nowhere in your explanation, Julian, was there, well, in terms of time horizons, we can mass extract capital by this point, and then who cares about the asset? There's a lot of due diligence, a huge amount of due diligence that's not only undertaken from IXS's perspective, but is compulsory by virtue of the license and by virtue of the jurisdiction and regulation. I think that's the biggest difference that we see between
To protect
RWA.
to
uh,
protect investors, and that's the whole thing. It's meant to be the whole
Absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely. I mean, we
Yeah.
move back to what you mentioned about ICOs. I mean, there was not a shred of investor protection, for example, with dental coins. Like, oh, it'll be for dentists. How? Don't worry about it.
Yep.
And I somewhere out there in a wallet is still some dental coin for myself if I ever need to get my teeth cleaned. Just waiting for a
Yeah.
dentist to out there to
Yeah.
accept it. Yeah, but this has been phenomenal, Julian. I know I could talk all day with you about this sort of thing, but I know it's getting late on your side of the world. It's
Sure.
still early here, so I don't want to eat into your evening. But with that said, would love to leave the audience with some information about what's next for you at IXS. How do you
Sure.
see the next
Yeah.
12, 24 months evolving?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let's say I've kind of just never been more bullish on IXS and the industry, and obviously that's an industry connected statement as well. Uh, it's been incredibly difficult. First movers in new industries that have regulation, a lot of incredibly difficult. But I think that at least for our team, it was kind of obvious this would happen. It was a when, not an if, for sure.
Mm.
So the when is now. I think we've got some really exciting partnerships coming down the pipeline with some of the biggest custodians in the world on the Bitcoin product. We have more partnerships lined up, um, crypto exchanges, uh, crypto wallets, fintechs, anywhere there's tens of millions of users that want to access this new asset class but need tech and licensed partner to be able to do that. So we've been building B2B first, which is a longer, harder game. But, you plug into a new crypto exchange and they've got 50 million users and tie world changes again. So we're excited by all these sort of developments. We have some new tokenomics coming out that we will share a little bit down the track. We just brought in a new CMO. We have some exciting marketing campaigns coming over the next couple of months, and yeah, looking ahead towards the USA. Obviously, we're super excited to be part of what you guys are doing here on the pod. I think that's exactly the kind of exciting activities that we should be doing as an industry. It's the combination of Web 2, Web 3. It ties up the concept of, gets people new to the space involved. So they don't even have to be new, but they can come and they can actually earn rewards for being involved to learn, right? Basically getting paid to learn. So that's pretty awesome.
Mm.
We're bringing a whole bunch of AI stuff. This is just from our own potential business, which is hyper speeding different things, everything from, marketing to tech. Yeah, and I think just it's nice to have tailwinds from a regulatory perspective and from the biggest capital market in the world. That's one of the biggest shifts. And to head to America and open up there is high on the agenda as well. We have 50-60% of our web traffic's been American for a year or two, without yeah. So anyway, there's a long laundry list of stuff. We welcome everyone to obviously join our communities. We got X's and Telegrams, keep everyone updated. Yeah, I'm very excited. I think this is going to be an incredible cycle for us. And yeah, appreciate you taking the time and sharing, being able to share IXS and the journey with all of your community.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. And I'm very excited for the new tokenomics and the marketing campaigns and the exciting things coming down the pipeline for you and IXS. And definitely we at the RWA Foundation will be supporting all the way. And naturally, for those listening, you're probably excited as well to get your hands on some IXS. And Julian, you mentioned the pod. Best way to do that currently is to take your USDC across, whether you're on Avalanche, Arbitrum, Sonic, Ethereum, Base. You can stake this USDC in the RWA pod and you can begin earning tokens, including the IXS token, based on the yield that your assets accrue. So super exciting times, very much mirrors the RWA yield-centric configuration. And with that said, Julian, very excited to have you and IXS participating in the pod as one of the flagship protocols. And with that said, we'll definitely be talking very soon in the near future. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. I look forward to seeing you all again.
Thank you.